doing whatever, then you kind of jumped out of there. But it's a really, I feel like that's a personal thing, right? Where you have to kind of like be willing to look in the mirror and be like, nah, I didn't really jump out there like I thought I was going to, or whatever, or maybe I didn't have that courage that I think that I do, right? And so how do you change something so personal like that? Like, how do you, it's tough.
I think recognizing it is probably the biggest success that can come from something like that. Recognizing that, I was talking gangster shit until it was time to do gangster shit, and then I didn't do the gangster shit, and understanding that. But unfortunately, there's some people that will just go right back to how they were operating before. Dan?
There we go. Sorry, I'm on my phone and it's a little weird. I like that thinking gangster shit to do gangster shit. That was funny, and that's true. But I was thinking about your question about this culture thing, because I'm still in that mindset of how this has impacted my current situation at work, and that's a big thing, a big part of it. I'm at that point with the leaders, the owners, I should say, of the business, where I'm like, hey, we really need to create a new culture here, and just create some standards and really some core values, because it's still a growing company. And my story I was gonna give to answer your question, or the answer to your question, is this: it's failures usually lead to a conflict, right? But I had this dude I worked with at Aon, his brokerage firm. He's a fifth group guy, and he was in the shit. He was the guys that were riding the horses. He was the real deal, man. He's a good dude. We ended up becoming really good friends, and but he humbled me on this, because we used to butt heads a lot, and on work stuff a lot. But he would always come to this point and say, hey, Dan, conflict leads to resolution. And that always just sat with me, because it was true. No matter how hard the conversation went, he would not end it until we had resolution on whatever the issue was. And in that case, a failure, right? Because a lot of times it was something in the business that fails, a process. And he was the first one to always note it out and point out to me, and we would discuss it. But that was it. Conflict leads to resolution. And then to A-Rod's point about courage, it's exactly that. So what he would do to me, being such a hard ass, he would test my mettle. He would always try to see if I'm going to be courageous enough to come to face to face with him, go face to face with him on whatever the issue would be. And then that was great. I liked it, actually. It gave me a little fire under me to kind of want to fight these, but that was one of those things. So that's what I think about in terms of culture, in terms of performance as leaders. If we could embrace a culture of allowing people to understand that their courage or their ability to have the courage to bring up whatever issue it is, whether it's a personal issue outside of work, a work specific issue, and for us to talk about it and come up with a resolution, but then implement that resolution to the rest of the organization, I think is the base of that culture and how you establish it. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with the owners. But I wanted to throw that in. So conflict leads to resolution.
That's that was awesome. I totally agree with what Bill just said too. And it also ties back to something else Bill was talking about with differences in generations. And one of the big things is, a lot of guys in our line of work that didn't get a chance to go to combat operations, they came in because they wanted to be tested and they wanted to see how they performed under that kind of stress environment. And you can't just create that artificially. And there's nothing we can do about that. There's nothing we can do to simulate war or whatever, right? But what we can do is we can try to help and encourage them to, pursue that conflict where they may fail elsewhere, and understand and know when you did fail and learn from it and come back at it again. Like, how many people will complain about the way the promotion system works? Hey, right here, right? Myself included. How many people complain about this, complain about that, and they never do anything to fix it? Or they only complain about it and they never try to take it on or challenge it. And they don't see hey, what can I do about this? Instead, they just back away from the whole thing and just they're the person who just pulls a freaking pin on the grenade, chucks it in the room and leaves and doesn't address the situation. I think that might be an opportunity. It's just something that came to my mind, kind of putting this whole conversation together. So.
Hey, Brad, I was just the one thing you said. I just wanted to plug in. How do we, the new generation, right, who are not going to get that experience, how do we replicate that? And what I found is successful is just drawing the parallels between that and life, and then us vocalizing our experience to help them understand that actually that stuff is easier than the things in life, the challenges in life, right? Because it was just so black and white there, and you had your team, you had your core group, you had this job, this responsibility. It was very easy. But then like some of these things that you're going to face in life, losses and breakups in relationships and things like that, that are very difficult. Sometimes you have to go through that like alone, right? And that's hella tougher than going through a 6-month combat deployment with all your buddies, with the support of all your family and all your friends back home, and so I think it's just kind of drawing those parallels and then helping them understand, like, you are going to be faced with those challenges. And so, like, how do we build that resiliency that is transferable across the spectrum of what is life, like not just in combat. I think it parallels all sorts of other things, why you guys are able to apply this in the civilian world and in your job right now. I mean, it all converges, I think.
I just typed this note up, and I thought Mario had his hand up a second ago. I'm going to jump in real quick. The word resilience comes up an awful lot, right? And there's an awesome book. I think Dr. Tedeschi is part of Transformed by Trauma, is what it's called. It's kind of like a follow-up to Struggle Well, sort of. Awesome book, but they talk a lot about resilience in there. And I think it's important to note, like, yes, resilience is good, right? Resilience is a great thing. But at the same time, something else is like, it's okay to feel like crap if you fail, right? That's a normal human reaction. And I think that's a big part of some of the problems we see today. In myself, I'm not saying I'm immune to it, but just in general in society is people either they just like kind of have like no resilience. So it's always everything is the world is ending. Or maybe they feel like they have the best resilience in the world. So what happens if nothing ever knocks you down? You don't ever learn from it. Just kind of a thought to throw out there on resilience, kind of disjointed, sorry. But.
No, that makes perfect sense to me because I spent the majority of my formative years falling down.
No, you spent the majority of your formative years getting back up, and that's kind of the key.
It is. It's both. I spent the majority of my formative years falling down over and over and over again. And a large part of me getting back up was maybe a little bit of my intestinal fortitude, but it also had to do with the people that I was surrounded by. And it's not always people that I chose to be surrounded by, but the level of impact a good supervisor can have on a young individual, whether it's a business, but especially military. I will tell you that Bill Eaton was one of the people who guided me more so throughout life than my own father with some of the struggles that I've had. So that's the level of impact a supervisor can have on somebody. Think about that.
I just wanted to ride in your probe.
It's not the first time I've been told that. I mean, let's be honest. Dan, what you got?
Well, what I had, Mario, you actually hit on it. I was just going to propose the idea or question of let's come to some resolution around this. I like where this is all going, but what is the answer to some of these questions? Like for instance, the resiliency thing. Brad, I think in that case, and I think we all agree here. Mario just kind of said it with his reference to Bill as a leader and his supervisor. It's I think it's us as leaders in the positions we are in. My opinion is it's us again doing the thing we all know best, is leading by example. And I even see it in a societal thing now as where I'll bring it into focus is like when we look at like the easiest thing like prejudice, racism, stuff like that. Well, I think I always say this: it exists if you want it to exist. And sure, there's people who are out there who are in quote unquote racist, but a lot of it's because they have a preconceived notion of what you are and what you're about and so forth. So I approach everyone in those situations as I would anyone else, because what you're doing by in that example is showing them something that they didn't know existed. You're actually teaching them a different side of different characterization or personality of you as a person that they had no idea, because we only know, what we're taught, what we see, what's in our immediate surroundings, our environment, our immediate culture, and that stuff prevails. So it's about being exposed to new things. So that's why I just try to always be myself and approach people, strangers, the same as I would to anyone. I had another point to go with that. I lost it, but I want to hear it from you guys. You know, like, here's my point. Is this other one? Sorry, I have to get this out there because this one actually is kind of impacted me. It's kind of impacted me ever since I've been injured. Well, you guys all know my resiliency is pretty strong. I'm a guy who likes to move forward all the time, and I've had a couple of times where I think I told you guys, one guy asked me, Dan, why the hell are you always smiling? Don't you ever have a bad day? Then I had a guy currently at work who's going through some depression issues and a bunch of different reasons. But then, you know, I think about how I am and how I present myself, and I hope it's always a good thing. But then sometimes I wonder if my outgoing personality and character is maybe too much, and him not to see that there is some in between. So I tried to like open up and share like the fact that, hey man, I have my ups and downs. I open up about the things that we talk about, how PTSD and all those things are never gone. They live with us. So you know, that's one thing we could do, but then it's a tough balance too, because you know, once we start opening those conversations, we open ourselves up to that roller coaster again and going back and forth, because we're accepting other, you know, we have most of us probably have a lot of empathy, and we accept people's pain and their sorrows, and we kind of feel that energy in us. And I try to avoid that in some cases and try to keep my momentum up. So anyways, those are some of my examples, but I want to hear, like, again, what are the resolutions to this? What are the answers to some of this? How do we help people perform at that high performance level?
Dan, I don't know if there is a resolution really for this. I think it's awareness is the key in my mind, anyway. And I want to address though, Mario, what you said, and it means a lot to me, obviously, and to Denise, the fact that you know, we were able to have such a positive influence on each other's lives, but that is, and I say that with meaning that you played a huge part in your success, because it wasn't because, you know, I let you live in my basement and, you know, Denise would feed you fudgicles and, you know, you were the most immature of our 3 kids, you know, any of that. That's not. It's because you were receptive to the mentoring, or to the counseling, or to that. You know, I had other troops that had lots of issues, and I wasn't always successful. And part of the problem, and it's your fault, Mario, because because I was successful with you, I thought, well, I can fix this guy, right? So now I'm stationed at Aviano, and I won't mention names, but there was a guy that was a slug, right? Who shouldn't have been. He should have been booted. But I can fix him, right? I had pride. I was too prideful to think that this person. So after, you know, giving it the good effort of, all right, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. But this cat was clever and knew exactly how far he could go and get away with it, and always counted on getting a new boss. And then that new boss was always an EOD guy, and we don't like to fail, right? So it wasn't until he got to his next base that he finally got a supervisor that was like, nope, that's it, and boom, he was out of the community. Thank God. Before he was deployed to the shooting war, where it would have been an absolute, he would have killed people, you know. And I take that as a huge failure on my part, because I didn't see that what I was doing was not going to work. You got to do due diligence, right? You got to try those things, but then you have to be able to say, all right, I can't do this, and this is not going to work, and now we need to take it to the next step. And that and it reminds me of a book, and in fact I brought up the book. It's called Braver Men Walk Away, by Sir Peter Gurney, a British bomb disposal operator during the Troubles. So he was in the Royal Army in the 70s, taking care of the IRA bullshit, and then London Met. He was on the London Met bomb disposal. Excellent book, and it talks about that, being able to, you have to see when you're at a point where, okay, this is now beyond me. And most men, especially guys like us, men and women that do what we do, or do what we did, that don't want to accept failure, and being able to see that failure and react in a way that is in your best interest, it's hard, because of, you know, talking about that social, wanting to be liked, and we think that, oh well, you know, these guys aren't going to like me if I say I can't do that, and being able to say no, I can't, is that's super hard. But I learned from that failure, so that, you know, taking it back to that supervisor position, I learned a lot from that failure, because I was able to see that weakness, I guess, in my character, and knowing that I can't fix everything, that helped in recognizing that. So it's my little. So Mario, you were the exception.
No, spot on. They broke the mold with me, that's for sure. I wrote in here